Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Leon Wilson, and as Cindy said, I'm the Chief Technology and Information Officer at the Cleveland Foundation. And just quickly, the Cleveland Foundation, we are the oldest, actually we're the grandfather of all community foundations globally. We invented the model back in Cleveland back in 1911. And there's community foundations now all over the place based on our start. At the Cleveland Foundation, I'm responsible for doing two things. Not only being their CIO, dealing with all the technology, how they're being used within the foundation, but also, more importantly, I think, is I have an external role, which is helping define the digital equity and inclusion strategy for all of Greater Cleveland. What are we doing in our grant-making efforts to ensure that all residents of what we call Cuyahoga County are participating in this new digital economy, this digital era, this digital age, and so to speak. So I talk with a lot of different anchor institutions, a lot of different stakeholders, if you will, helping position where we do our grant-making dollars to support education, to support digital literacy, to support smart city initiative, to support workforce development, you name it. But that being said, when I was driving from, I was at another conference 2 days ago or yesterday, in Columbus, Ohio. It was the Ohio GovTech Conference. And surprisingly for that conference, that was the very first time of all the conferences I've been to, and I've been going to a lot of tech conferences over the last 20 years, the first time I actually got to see an actual bona fide motivational self-help speaker give a talk, kind of the Tony Robbins type. Came out on stage, standing on the stage, talking about you can be all you can be, and talking about leadership. But he talked about leadership through the lens of rock climbing, because he was a rock climber. And he was so pumped up and so hyped, and he came in there with his electric guitar and all that kind of stuff, lessons he's learned when he was a kid. And I said, I don't know if I can do that in Pittsburgh. I've already given my slides to Cindy, and I don't know if I can morph in rock climbing or some other obtuse thing that I've done in my life to help educate technology and how technology can empower nonprofits. And then to make matters worse, the next day we had another self-help presenter. This time he was talking about communication skills. And for the most part, he was just saying, throw away PowerPoint. And I was like, oh crap, I've already given my PowerPoint slides. I can't undo it. So how do I now pivot to talking to just one slide for 30 minutes, which I'm trying to get to, where you have that one beautiful picture and then your whole story and narrative surrounding that. I haven't gotten there yet because I also teach. So the teacher in me wanted to have material up front so that you can read along and so forth, but I'm getting there. But I did learn some lessons. I learned that if you want to gain trust, you got to show your palms. There's something psychological about that as far as when a presenter is communicating, the more times he or she shows their palms, it conveys trust. How to scan your audience and snap them back and make sure that they're engaged and all that sort of stuff to shock them into listening. And the fact that no matter what I talk about, at the end of the day, you're only going to retain about 20 or 30% of everything that I said. So then what 20 or 30% do I want you to walk away with? Now, fortunately, I was lucky that the way I organized my slides, I said, okay, I think I can make that happen. I think I can make that happen. And it started off by this right here. Moonshot. Moonshot topics, moonshot questions. How many of you in here, is anyone, you know the MacArthur Foundation that got that $100 million challenge? Did anyone here apply for that $100 million challenge? Raise your hands if you applied. I see one organization. I'm surprised. I would suspect that I would see about 4 or 5. But again, the $100 million challenge, MacArthur is trying to get some kind of moonshot idea to inspire, to say, what can we do to address a particular social issue? Or what kind of social impact can we do? And I use this as a reference slide because what I want to talk about is to change our thinking about how we're going about funding with technology. I guess I should also say that the reason why I'm giving this talk is because, as Cindy said, I spent a number of years working in the trenches with nonprofits, with small and medium-sized nonprofits, trying to help them understand how they can leverage technology. Sitting down, talking with the executive directors, the CEOs, the presidents, whatever title they may have, helping them understand and helping them talk to their board about how they can leverage and adopt technology. And I bumped my head a number of times when it was like swimming upstream. And over the past year, now I'm on the other side of the fence. I'm in the foundations. I'm in the philanthropic side. I'm with one of the larger community foundations in the country. And now I'm listening to my peers, my program officers, my program directors look at and scrutinize grants that come in. So now I have a perspective as a grantee talking with grassroots nonprofits seeking funding for technology. And I'm actually behind the scenes now in those inner circles, in those locker room conversations, understanding what's going on, what's being challenged, how do we view technology grants. So I coupled those two experiences together in this talk to say, what can I share with you, as Ben talked about, actionable learning. What can I transfer to you? What can I educate you on and share with you to help you basically improve your chances of increasing your ability to get funding for your technology initiatives? But to do that, we got to think in a moonshot mindset. I need you to think differently. And the question that I want to pose to you, and I want you to kind of think about this question, and now we're back at this again. How does technology further your social mission? I'm going to say that again. How does technology further your social mission? It doesn't say support, it says further. That means, how does it increase, enhance? How does technology further your social mission? I saw this picture at an N10 conference a few years ago, and I said, that says it all. I want you to pencil in or think about this question, because I'm going to keep coming back to this question a number of times in my talk. I'm going to start off, though, by talking about two people, two groups of individuals that play an important role as it pertains to your ability to implement and utilize technology within your nonprofits. Who are these people? Well, right now they're just a bunch of individuals. But if I said this could very well be your board members, why are they important? These are the individuals that are responsible for working with your CEO, working with your executive director, and so forth, approving your budget, approving your strategy, approving any kind of major initiatives or programming that you want to do. So they carry a lot of influence in regards to what you can and cannot do within your nonprofit, within your organization. But equally, these folks could also be your funders, people like me, the individuals that you're going to seek funding for your technology initiatives. Whether they're your board members, whether they're your funders, I lump them together and say that they're your chief influencers. It's these two groups of individuals that ultimately kind of decide and determine your ability to use technology in your organization, to try to implement technology in organization. So before we go back to that question, how does technology support or further your social mission, it might be helpful for us to take a moment to go and take a look at these two very individuals and see what their opinion, their perspective, their expectation of how technology are to be used within your organization before we go back and look at it from a funding perspective. So what do board members think about when they think about technology? What's on their minds? How do they view technology? I look at and I say, well, first let's talk about the makeup of your board. How many of you on your board, if you know who's on your board, how many individuals on your board have a technology background? I got two hands, maybe 3 or 4 out of maybe, 75 people or 100 people in this room. There was a study that was done a few years ago that says even in the for-profit sector, there's only about 1% of individuals that carry some kind of CIO, Chief Technology Officer, Vice President of Technology, or maybe own a tech company that participate on the board. But if you look at it from through the nonprofit's lens or perspective, I would argue that number is probably at 1%, if not lower, as indicative of the poll that I just took. So if you don't have anybody who has a deep understanding of how technology can be utilized to support an organization, then you're already at an uphill battle when you're trying to advocate for upgrading your databases, adopting a new CRM solution, implementing mobile technology within your organization, addressing things, trying to migrate to cloud computing, moving away from servers, and whatever, or electronic case management systems and so forth. You're at a disadvantage because you're talking to individuals that may not appreciate it or understand the importance and the relevance that it can play within your organization. They're looking at it right now as, and it's funny, these are very astute individuals. Most of the people on your board are probably CPAs, lawyers, public policy officials, or just highly valuable named individuals within your community that are on there. But they're very smart people. But it seems like when they become a board member of a nonprofit, the idea of technology is almost like exempt, just like our tax status is exempt and it's not applicable to nonprofits. That all the benefits that they've seen here at UPMC and at Heinz and at other major companies, they're investing all these dollars in technology to improve, increase their market share, reduce operational inefficiencies, all those abilities, why they're pouring millions of dollars in technology. For some reason, when we talk about it in the nonprofit lens, it does not compute. Why is that? During the board meetings, how much time is spent talking about technology? 20%, any time at all, or is it only when it's time to renew the budget? And when they're talking about it, are they talking about it more so in a traditional sense, where they're concerned about the financial implications, legal aspects, and so forth? I mean, they're spending more time talking about legal issues. They're spending more time talking about where the executive director presented, the different talks he or she gave, the interviews that they took, how many news press releases that they were on, or any kind of public policy or any kind of other kind of issues that are going on, rather than technology and the benefits and the empowerment that technology can have in that particular organization or in that institution. As well, as I said before, when we're talking about technology within our board meetings, we're doing it in an operational manner. We're talking about it in the sense of wires and hardware. I need to buy some more servers. I need to upgrade my PCs. We're not talking about it in a strategic sense. And what do I mean by that? We're not having a conversation around the board table using terms such as, in order for us to increase our ability to reach a wider audience, we need to adopt a social media enterprise strategy that enables us to reach the millennials as well as the baby boomers and the Gen Xers equally. So we're going to adopt this platform in order so that we can get our message out, so that we can increase our fundraising capabilities, and so that we can do other things. Now you're not talking about technology, you're talking about your mission. You're doing mission talk as opposed to tech talk. But you don't hear that kind of conversation going on in your board meetings. So I've been in a lot of board meetings, attended a lot of board meetings, given a talk or two at some board meetings and so forth. And over the time, I decided, you know what? What is the IT of our board? What is the IQ of our board when it comes to IT? What is their IT IQ? Because that will help me understand basically who I'm dealing with and how I need to frame my conversation and so forth. So I put together a little litmus test. It's not a scientific test. I just want you to follow along. You don't have to actually pull out a sheet of paper and grade it, but I want you to just kind of think about the questions that I throw out here. Just 5 short questions. So the first question, what percentage of your board members have a tech background? As I just talked about, less than 20%, half, more than half, Now, you're in Pittsburgh, you're not in Silicon Valley, so maybe you don't have access to all the tech geeks in the world. If you were in Silicon Valley, if you were in San Francisco, San Jose, but as I understand it now, Pittsburgh is the autonomous vehicle capital with Google and Uber coming in place, so you should have access to some of those folks. How much time is spent strategically discussing technology? The operative word, strategically. Not talking about, oh, we need to upgrade PCs, or we need to migrate from Microsoft Office to Google Apps. Talking strategically about technology. Does your board have a committee who is responsible to explore the utilization of technology in your organization? Keyword, explore. Now, don't mistake this for your finance committee, who has that line item in there to monitor the tech budget. That's different. That's an operational duty, is monitoring the dollars. I'm talking about one or two people in your board that's responsible for keeping abreast of what's going on, that is watching the news feeds, or that following places like TechSoup and N10 and Idealware, or going to conferences such as this, keeping a perspective or a lens on how technology can be utilized in nonprofits or other kind of examples and case studies. Is technology only viewed as an operational overhead budget or a strategic initiative? Yes, no, somewhat. And then the final question that I have for you is, does your board members or any of your board members have access to a technology subject matter expert when they need it? On our boards, in our organizations, we can't afford to hire a full-time lawyer or general counsel. We can't afford to hire a full-time CPA, so we outsource that stuff. We contract it out. We have somebody on retainer. So when we need to review our legal documentation and so forth, we know who to go to. Do you have that same access? You have a lot of vendors that are out here that might be able to be on contract for you to help you out when you need to understand what role can cloud computing play in our organization. What should we be mindful about as it pertains to cybersecurity and data breaches? You see all the conversation in politics about emails. What if our executive director email was hacked? What might that look like? Would it be embarrassing? Do you have access to that kind of resource, that kind of subject expertise to keep your board abreast of what they ought to be concerned with? It's these 5 questions that, if you add them all up, can help determine what your board's IT IQ is. And if you feel that there is a deficiency in your board, or there's an illiteracy issue within your board, as this understanding of technology and how it can be utilized, what might you be able to do? So I have a few recommendations for that. First, look at it from a board development perspective. As other board members are rolling off, make that a component. Start looking for and start recruiting individuals from your community that have a senior IT or IT strategy background. Start introducing them onto your board. Start having annual or biannual meetings, if you will, or conversations, where you might bring somebody in and educate the board on major things that are trending in the tech space. Should we be concerned about disruptive technology? What kind of disruptive technology might impact me as a mental health and substance abuse clinic? What kind of disruptive technology might impact me as a local Boys and Girls Club? What social media venue should I be on as a small private family foundation and things of that nature? Having somebody to come out there and educate. So I know that we a lot of times will have people that we serve come in there for our mission talks and mission moments to get in there and give that bleeding heart story about how your nonprofit saved them from the streets, kept them off welfare, helped their family find housing and homes. But at least once or twice a year, have a meeting where the board has been educated. If technology is so empowering going on in our society, if we're in what is called the digital age, and the digitization of society, then why aren't we placing that same amount of importance in our nonprofit organizations? Why are we not educating our board members about the relevance of that and the impact and the empowerment that technology can be utilized within our organizations? Establish a technology committee. Identify one or two folks in your board to look at and stay abreast so that it's not the responsibility of the entire board, but you're tasking maybe two people to stay focused, to come to TechNow, to go to other conferences, to subscribe to different news feeds, and bring to the board, hey, we might want to consider adopting this platform. We might want to look at adopting this kind of technology because it's going to transform the way we service our clients. Retain expertise. If you don't have access, because again, I hear the term, and I've heard the term for umpteen years, the accidental techie. Well, that's great that you have an accidental techie, but how about an intentional techie? Do you have access to an intentional techie, someone whose job is to stay abreast of tech trends and to inform you about the do's and don'ts, what's ready for prime time versus what isn't? Always consider doing a technology plan, but orient that technology plan to where now the board is monitoring it. It's not just a one-time thing. And then the final recommendation that I would have, and this is the key one, is mapping technology to your mission. I'll say it again, mapping technology to your mission. And I have an example of how you can do that, but what I mean by that is, let's not talk tech talk, let's talk mission talk. How do we convey that? A good example, if we're working at a clinic and we're going out in the field doing home site visits and so forth, and we're not equipping our clinicians, our social workers, our caseworkers with mobile technology so that they can have access to the data, access to the information while they're at the client site. They're just taking copious notes on paper and pencil, and then coming back in the office to have to retranscribe that information. Then what happens with errors, delays? Now that person can only service 3 people a day as opposed to 5. Whereas if we were adopting the right kind of technology, now we can enhance our capacity to the point where that same social worker can service more people. So you don't have to go out and hire a 5th or 6th FTE for that role because you're increasing the ability of everyone else. But you're talking mission talk because now we want to serve more people. So enough about the board. Let's talk about people like me, the funders. What are we thinking about technology when you're presenting your grants to us and so forth? Well, unfortunately, I'm sad to say a lot of foundations look at this and ask the question, well, isn't this just part of you doing business? Why are you coming to us asking $10,000 to upgrade your hardware? Isn't that just like buying pencils and paper and buying buying Xerox material? So what can you do about that? And what they're really asking is, how is this supporting your social mission? The challenge is, and the problem is that how you're presenting your grants to the foundations. You're presenting it like you're presenting steak on a garbage can as opposed to on a platter. It's all in a presentation. And what I mean by that is you're not presenting to the foundations. You're not presenting to my peers, the program officers, the program directors, the vice president of grant making, as this is a social impact strategic grant. You're viewing it as an operational grant. You call it a capacity grant, but you're really misusing the term capacity. So when we see this grant, we see it as, oh, they're asking us to give them dollars for doing something that they should have been doing on their own, investing in themselves. So I would argue that you position that grant differently. But to position that grant, when you start putting together a tech grant, ask yourself these following questions to better position the grant to and make it more attractive to a funder. Let's start off with capacity building. What is capacity building? Well, this is the technical term definition of capacity building from the Council of Nonprofits, but I dumbed it down or synthesized it down to this right here that we can better understand. It's all about improving operational, programmatic, financial, and organizational impact, capacity of an organization. It's about expanding our ability. Somehow that term has got hijacked, and now it's everything, when really what it is about increasing your ability to do more. So when we look at and we try to talk to funders, we ought to be asking ourselves, is this grant increasing your capacity to meet the needs of the community that you're servicing? Is this grant positioning your nonprofit to handle any kind of increased demand that you might forecast, project? If you know that in your state or local or municipalities that they're doing a lot of defunding, and you're going to see more people coming to your front door asking for your services, how are you better positioning yourself for that? So that we need to adopt this new technology. We need to adopt a CRM solution. We need to adopt a case management system, because we got to be ready to handle the additional 10% of individuals that are going to come across our doorstep asking for our assistance. It becomes a strategic enablement as opposed to a tech grant. How will this grant position your organization to expand into new lines of services and programs that are valuable? And the million-dollar question in the eyes of the funder is how this grant align with the funder's own interests. We have our own mission. We're trying to improve the quality of life of individuals in our respective communities. How are you helping us do that? How is this grant that you're providing us going to enable that to work? So, what is the demonstrable impact that us funding this initiative going to have on you doing your work that is making us look good? It's pretty much this right here in a nutshell. How are you helping us help ourselves? We don't actually do the work. You're the ones in the trenches doing the work. But our board wants to look good just as well. We want our board members sitting around the coffee table talking about and bragging about how we're helping improve educational attainment or reduce unemployment, or dealing with social issues and so forth. So how are you positioning your grant to say, by giving us these dollars, you're now enabling us to do more, to service more, which is in alignment with your own social mission? So real quickly, some examples that I want to share with you that's actually how I connected with my own board when I was working at a nonprofit. I kind of asked it this way. I said, well, while technology may not feed the hungry, it can provide nonprofits with new and innovative ways to collect food and online donations. It can also enable nonprofits to be more efficient, in turn, increase their ability to feed more individuals through efficiencies. And while technology cannot coach an inner city school team or conduct an after-school program, it can assist staff and volunteers with registration, program management, and communication with participants, parents, and volunteers. And while technology on its own cannot rebuild a distressed neighborhood, it can be used to collect data and on communities and municipalities and neighborhood revitalization organizations to develop better strategies to addressing blight, to addressing revitalization of various neighborhoods. And while technology cannot perform community outreach services, it can unchain that outreach worker to work directly in the field, servicing their communities while still having access in a secured manner with the information of the folks that they're trying to serve. It can also provide either access to client records and intake processing, as well as serving as a communication lifeline between the nonprofits and the communities that they're trying to serve. That's mission talk. That's strategy talk. Foundations get that. So now when you're presenting that grant, it's not going and saying which foundations support tech grants, it's which nonprofits support capacity building, Which nonprofit supports education or arts or health and human services? And now let's reposition, let's represent our grant in a way that is in line with what they're trying to do. So then it goes back to this fundamental question that I started with the whole talk. How does technology further your social mission? The better you're able to answer this question, the better position you will be at securing funding from any particular foundation. Thank you.